Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Fed Up, your no BS nutrition podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Marie, certified personal trainer and nutrition specialist, working with clients since 2014. After swimming up diet culture's bullshit stream for so many years, I am fed the absolute up with how miserable it's making people feel when we are supposed to be getting healthier. This podcast is here to help you gain your sanity back so you can stop yo-yoing once and for all and finally learn how to trust yourself so you can enjoy food again without fear or shame while still getting to your health goals. My aim is to teach you how to detect the BS in not just the food and diet industries, but in all realms of life, because I know that, like me, we are all just a little fed up. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Okay, y'all, we have to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves today. I cannot stand when you hear people tell you to everything in moderation, just eat in moderation. Because what does that mean? When I've asked clients, what does that mean to you? I've heard everything from, oh, I only have sweets at birthdays or holidays, to, well, I know I should probably eat a little more moderate, but I have fast food every single day. I have something sweet for breakfast without any other, protein or anything like that. And I know I should probably be more moderate, but it's not that bad, right? I've literally had people tell me they eat Pringles for breakfast and they're not even sure if that's that bad. And then I have other people tell me that, well, you should never have Pringles except maybe the occasional road trip, and that's moderation. So what's the truth? Moderation, when defined by Google, is the quality of being reasonable, avoiding extremes or excesses in behavior, actions, or beliefs. So when I say to just eat in moderation, that is telling you to don't be extreme, just eat reasonably. That means nothing to a lot of people. Because what the hell is reasonable nutrition? A lot of us don't know because we are bombarded with the fact that everything is poisoning us, right? You are bombarded with the fact that you should not buy this, but buy this instead. It is all marketing, and we hear so much advice from quite extreme sources, especially online, because the more polarizing, the more extreme, the more views you're going to see. So when I say to be reasonable, some people have no idea what reasonable nutrition actually looks like. And I've had clients who think that they're eating a lot of food. And when I've had them send me pictures of their plate for a couple of days, they're not eating nearly as much as they think they are. So unless they're straight up lying to me, which might happen, yes, I'm believing that my clients are not absolutely lying to me, especially when they're tracking or during the periods of tracking. They're not very long. I'm not somebody who recommends that you track all the time, every single day, forever, because it doesn't always help people. And I want to teach you how to, quote unquote, eat in moderation. But first, we have to figure out what the F that means. And I actually use a different word, which we'll talk about later, and why next time you hear someone say everything in moderation, you can just silently roll your eyes with me, right? So the thing about eating in moderation, again, when I Googled it, it talked about not overindulging in food or drink. But what the F is considered overindulgence? Again, it differs from person to person. What I'm going to define as overindulgence is being so comfortable, you're uncomfortable. It's I ate so much, I now have to unbutton my pants. And whether that discomfort comes from a physical sensation or also a mental and emotional one, overindulgence specifically refers to allowing oneself or someone else to have or do something to excess, especially something enjoyable, or to be excessively permissive. Again, what the heck does that mean? Everyone has very different definitions of what is considered permissive. Now, when we talk about parental feeding styles, like how your parents feed you as a child, we do talk about something called permissive parenting, which means there's absolutely no guidance, right? You let the child run wild with whatever they want to eat, whenever they want to eat. However, like there's zero regulation, or maybe even the child has to just fend for themselves. And this might look like the fridge is stocked, the pantry stocked, but like no food is being prepared for the family or for the child. So the child's just kind of making their own food. There's nothing wrong with this, especially if you're teaching your child good skills to use and make those decisions. But if that's all the child knows, of course the child doesn't know not to eat a Twinkie for lunch, right? You have to teach and guide and model is the best way I can describe it. Because if you're eating as a family balanced meals 2 to 3 times a day, or you're eating balanced meals in front of your children, they're going to pick up those habits. So when we're adults, which is who I primarily work with, I talk a lot about how were you fed as a child? What do you remember about the dinner time? And there are, again, so many different versions of how parents have been like, oh yeah, well, my mom, she tried to teach us everything in moderation. And I said, okay, what did that look like? Oh, well, we only really had cake or any sweets like birthday parties or Christmas. I'm like, that's moderate to you? That seems very extreme to me. Whereas other families, again, like she had candy for breakfast because mom wasn't around or mom didn't care or whatever it may be. I have adults who grew up in an almond household where their moms and or dads were incredibly restrictive and controlling about their feeding. And so then they became adults or they went up to college and they're like, oh my God, what is licorice? What is candy? What is chips? What is soda? And then they end up overindulging, quote unquote, because they've never been exposed to it before and they've never been able to practice, quote unquote, moderation because their parents were relatively extreme, but they don't know that, right? So what the hell is considered moderation when we are bombarded with all these different versions of people's opinions and what we've grown up with and social media and marketing that is telling us what we're eating is wrong all the frickin' time, right? So when I Googled how to eat in moderation, what the Google machine told me was a couple of things that I'll read out to you. Focus on mindful eating. What does that mean? Portion control. What does that mean? And balance your diet with a variety of foods while also enjoying treats in smaller amounts. What is considered a small amount of treat? Again, we are talking about very, very, very different perspectives. This is not something that's like, okay, well, the color red has a true red, and then there might be a couple of shades of red. No, there's like a lot of shades of red, right? Like a lot of shades of red. You could even say pink is a shade of red, right? There's probably shades of red that we cannot even see with our human eye. Let's look at it that way. When you talk about focus on mindful eating, what does that mean to a different person? It's going to vary so greatly. And also, it's going to be poor advice for some people. So I have certain clients who, when I say focus on mindful eating, again, how do you do that? What is the skill for that? Do I just like stare at my food? Like, what does that mean? Do I obsess over reading all the ingredients and weighing everything and measuring everything and tracking everything? Is that being mindful? What's considered being mindful? How do I eat intuitively? Which again, we'll talk about a little bit later. But when you hear this advice, to some people, it doesn't mean jack shit because it's so vague and so unspecific, and it means different things to different people, and it can be poor advice for different people. So for some people, when I say mindful eating, it is because they're eating very quickly, they're eating on the go, they're eating out of bags and containers. They do have zero idea what they're eating, how much they're eating, how quickly they're eating. Like they have really never looked at what's in food. And maybe they eat very distracted, like in front of TVs or scrolling, and they don't even remember eating, right? It's almost mindless, and it's a lot of snacking, and it's a lot of, almost like this constant eating throughout the day, maybe, right? Say we have someone like that, and I say focus on mindful eating. they probably have no idea what that means or how to do that. And what I'm going to look at is what's the real source of the way that they're eating? Is it just because we have no regulation? Maybe they're just looking for sensory input, which happens a lot with neurodivergence. So if you're just looking for sensory input, you don't really have, strong hunger, fullness cues. You don't eat full meals, maybe with protein, carbs, and fats to keep you fuller longer. Then you're just snacking all day long, right? So I'm going to focus on first maybe eating fuller meals, right? Like, okay, let's actually build a meal. Let's not eat out of the container. Let's not do this. Let's not do that. Let's put it on a plate and let's have you sit down and actually eat a meal. That would be a skill that encompasses mindful eating. For other people, I've had them say that when I eat really, really fast. I don't even taste my food because I hate eating. I hate how I feel when I eat because I feel so gross. And then I eat so fast and I eat too much. And then I usually say like a joke about it so that other people can't comment about how much I'm eating. And then I just never enjoy it. And then I usually go home and eat more. So for them, I might say, okay, I want you to eat a little slower. I want you to focus on only eating what's on your plate and taking full, couple of minutes to chew all of your food. And that takes time. That takes practice, right? And they also have a lot of negative thoughts that are going on at the same time. So we've got to challenge those thoughts and get her thinking differently, or him. So there's a whole process for certain people about mindful eating that could be helpful, but you have to give them just the actual skills and the specific, I guess, techniques that could work. So something that I do with, again, certain people is I'll tell them about the 5 senses, right? When you're eating, I want you to look at the food, smell the food, hear the food as it's cooking or as it's crunching. Like, what does it sound like? And if you have misophonia, I'm so sorry, but usually we can do this with ourselves, right? It's more like other people eating we can't stand. But if you're someone who, again, has just never really looked at your food because it's given you a lot of anxiety, exposure therapy might help a little bit. Slowing down might help a little bit. Learning to chew your food fully might help a little bit. But again, why aren't you chewing your food fully? Is it because of all these mental blocks about eating? You're eating really fast, this, that, and the other? Or are you like me and you have a lot of sensory issues with eating because you might have ARFID? Or again, with autism or ADHD or any neurodivergence, you might have issues and sensory issues eating, or you might have had a lot of dental work and it's not a pleasant experience to eat, or you have TMJ. So for myself, I've had a lot of dental work done. My jaw gets fatigued by chewing, and I didn't really realize that I was swallowing food whole or just only half chewing my food and then swallowing pretty quickly. And it's a practice to slow down, to chew it all the way so that it's minced up. And then I'm wondering why I'm bloated and why I have digestive issues. A lot of times it starts with you're eating too fast, or you're drinking a lot of carbonation around your meals, or you're not eating enough fiber and then you eat a whole meal of fiber and then you don't eat fiber for a week and then you eat, it's just inconsistency. Or if you're like me, you don't chew your food a lot. So this is going to differ depending on the source, depending on the behavior, depending on your thoughts. And use mindful eating does not work for other people. If you are hyper focused on what you're eating all the time and you get really obsessive, or maybe you do have some traits of OCD or, again, sensory issues that make eating a really difficult experience, mindful eating is going to make that worse. It is going to make you more obsessive. It is going to make all the sensations much more extreme. So I might actually give some people the advice to distract themselves while they're eating, because some people don't have an appetite. Some people have issues to actually eat and gain weight and remember to eat. So that's going to look very differently than someone who is snacking all day long and has no idea what they're putting in their body because they're eating everything in sight. It's going to look very differently. And mindful eating can be very harmful for certain people. Same thing with portion control. What the fuck does that mean? Is a 4-ounce chicken breast the portion for every single person? No. Let me let you in on a little secret. No. When you look at the serving size on a food package, or if you look up a serving size of chicken, think about it this way. The serving size is just a measurement. It is simply being able to say, okay, there is this amount of nutrients in this amount of food. That's all it is. If the serving size of your favorite cereal is a half a cup and you're like, I have a cup and a half, it's not necessarily that you're eating 3 like servings worth of cereal, oh my gosh, that's 3 people's worth or that's 3 meals worth. No, it is simply you're eating 3 servings of that food, so measure it in 3 servings. Portions depend on what you need for your body. It depends on what your hunger cues are and how hungry you are, which depends on a lot of things. So if you have more than 1 serving of a food, you are not the problem. It is just a measurement. So when you're looking at portion control, again, this differs because I've had people who think they're eating a lot of food. And when I look at it, I tell them that is the food a 4-year-old eats. That is the nutritional needs of a toddler, not a full-grown woman who's lifting weights, who's hiking, who's working, who's raising children, who's doing things in an adult body. And if you are heavier set, if you're 200 pounds, 300 pounds, you need to eat for a 300-pound person. And then we'll start to maybe eat for a 280-pound person, and that's a calorie deficit, right? And then as you lose weight, you can decrease the amount of calories you need, typically, like a little bit. But if you're 300 pounds, you need more calories to exist than someone who is 100 pounds, right? So think about a man who's twice the size of you. Think about a human adult versus a child, right? We know intrinsically that bigger people need more calories, but yet when it comes to people who are fat or have excess fat, it's like, well, you don't need that much calories. Here, 1,200. 1,200 is way too low. That's literally what a toddler eats, okay? If you start high, then you have somewhere to decrease. Then you have somewhere to go down rather than starting at starving. And then the only way to go is up whenever you go to a normal diet or whenever you go out to eat or whenever you decide to have anything quote unquote off plan. Now you're in a calorie surplus. Now you just released the frickin' dam to the waterfall and now you're eating everything in sight because it triggered something in you that said, we've been starving for 3 weeks or 3 days. Eat all the food because we're going to be starving again. So yes, this all has an effect on how your body metabolizes food and how it uses energy. There's no such thing as starvation mode. When you are actually starving, you will lose weight. If you have excess weight to lose, you can actually survive a little longer without food. That's a terrible, terrible fun fact for you. But yes, if you are larger, you can survive without food longer than somebody who doesn't have fat to eat into for energy. However, you still need to eat today, tomorrow. Sorry, there's a truck going by. Hope you cannot hear that. You need to eat for your size body, whatever it may be. And then we can start to adjust, right? And decrease the calories or whatever it may be. So when Google says, don't deprive yourself of treats, allow yourself occasional indulgences, but in smaller portions, plan for treats, eat mindfully and slowly when enjoying treats. Direct quote, thank you, Google. This again is so fucking vague. It doesn't mean jack shit for anybody because for certain people, that sentence, like, don't deprive yourself of treats, allow yourself occasional treats. Okay, so what does don't deprive yourself of treats mean? Does that mean I can have a treat all the time, anytime I think about it? Some people don't have that discipline, right? They don't have that hunger fullness cue yet. They don't have that emotional and stress eating strategy to not binge on what their brain and body says to binge on. You can't start there, right? Don't deprive yourself of treats. What does that frickin' mean? I've had people say, well, I don't deprive myself of treats. Like, I have cake on my birthday. Again, like that to me is like pretty deprived. I have something sweet every single day. That would be pretty extreme for some people. So first, I want to see where you are on the extreme scale. Are you someone that has a sweet treat every day, 3 times a day, multiple times a day? Or are you someone who has a sweet treat 3 times a year? Okay, so that's going to look different when I give you advice. And if you're somebody who tends to restrict treats like for a while and then you like end up, just going back to old habits and having a lot of sweet treats again, and you kind of go in these cycles, which is mostly what's common, you're mostly who I'm talking to. It's I do have these people, but when I do get like the little sweet old lady that's like, I haven't had chocolate in 20 years and I'm fine. Okay, I'm not going to try to tell her, well, you need to eat chocolate. But her type of advice, her type of like, well, you don't even need chocolate. I just don't have it in the house. And so I don't crave it. That doesn't work for some people. And that would never work for me. If I got rid of all the sweets in my house and like in my life, I would last one day. I would last one freaking day. And then I would go and eat 6 crumble cookies, okay? Because that's what happens. You restrict and then you binge. And the restriction can happen in your mind, not necessarily actual restriction. So again, what is considered a treat, what is considered occasional doesn't actually help, which is why I try not to use those terms, especially when coaching clients, because I need to find out what their definitions are first, and then we go from there. If I just tell you, eat in moderation, you're going to be like, cool. I think I am. I don't know what that means. Moderation, my mom literally does not allow us to have anything. Is that moderate? Like, I don't know what moderation is. It's the same reason why I freaking hate the 80-20 rule, because I looked this up too. What's the 80%, 20% rule for diet? All of the blogs is like, well, 80% of the time eat nutrition foods. 80% of the time do this. And then 20% of the time. Who measures their time that way accurately? You don't, because you're human. Who measures their food that way? Like 80% of my food. You don't know what 80% of your food looks like. Do you know how I know? Because when people use this rule, I ask them what is 80%, and to them it's a 4-day freaking weekend binge fest. And then during the week, they tend to eat super restrictive and like their super meal prep diet foods, and then they go crazy on the weekends. That is not 80-20. But if you have not done the math, I have. So 20% of 7 days of your week is 1.4 day. This means that 20% is like a full day and a half. So if you like to rot Saturday afternoon and then all of Sunday, cool, good for you. There's your 1.4 day. But during that 20%, it cannot be just balls to the wall. Okay, I mean, sometimes, but if you look at a month, right, what's 20% of your month? If you have 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, that's 21 meals total per week. That means at least 4 of those meals are part of that 20%. So 4 meals, you don't have to be freaking perfect. Yes, that might be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But again, your 20% is not balls to the frickin' wall, okay? It's not an absolute binge fest. It's just like, yeah, loosen the reins a little bit or freaking go and order pizza. It's not the end of the world. If you have 2 snacks every day, all day long, or all week long, that's 14 snacks per week. That is almost 3 snacks during the week. That can be like, a treat, a snack treat. And then in the month, you're eating 3 meals a day. We're talking 18 meals per month that are that 20%. 18 meals means about 6 dinners, 6 lunches, 6 breakfasts. So have the donut sometimes, have the Starbucks sometimes. However, be honest with yourself. If you are having the Starbucks, are you binging on that Starbucks? Are you going crazy and you're ordering like 3 times the amount that a breakfast should be? Do an audit, right? Make sure that your breakfast at Starbucks or whatever it is, it's still like around, maybe give yourself some wiggle room, like 600 calories or less for like breakfast, not just your drink. If your drink alone is 600 calories, maybe we need an alternative. Or maybe you make it like that occasional drink, right? Like once a month, once every other month. Again, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if you're having that drink every single day, if you're having that drink 3-4 times a week, that's when we got to look at, okay, is that what's really holding us up? Because sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But I've had people be like, well, I have this like really crazy high sugar calorie food like twice a month. I'm like, dude, if you cut that out, it's not going to do anything. Like, it's not going to do anything. That's not your biggest problem. I've had some people, this is a better example that I give a lot. I've had people who drink a soda or 4 a day, like full calorie, full sugar sodas, a Coca-Cola, 4 per day. If I have that person switch to diet cola or they're able to do 2 or only 1, versus 4 every day, that person's going to see probably like a major difference in not only their health and their weight, but also their teeth and their sleep because of caffeine, like all of that cascading effects, right? Because they just went from 4 super caffeinated, super high sugar, super calorie dense drink. That's literally, if you think of like a Coca-Cola being about 300 calories, 2 to 300 calories, depending on how much you have. If you just cut out 1,000 calories every single day, yeah, you're going to drop some weight like immediately, especially if this has been a habit for a long time. If I tell you to cut out soda and you're like, oh yeah, I have a soda like a couple times a month out with dinner, but you're not somebody who eats a whole bunch out and you're not somebody who drinks a whole bunch of soda, me telling you to cut out soda does not make the biggest difference for you. And I've had people that when they're doing things that are really healthy, like they're eating all the quote unquote right things, they're exercising, they're this and that, all the behaviors are there. It is a lot harder to actually like get past, whatever your goal may be because you're kind of already doing the right things versus somebody who's not exercising, not eating literally a fruit or vegetable a day in their life. They're drinking a whole bunch of sodas. Their diet consists of chips and candy all day long. We make any changes to their life, bam, major changes, right? Major freaking outcomes. So it's gonna look different. That's my point of why moderation is a jack shit term. So what I like to use is not intuitive either. Intuitive eating does not work for somebody who is struggling with stress or emotional eating, or if they don't know how to listen to their hunger cues, they struggle with their appetite, or they have ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, or another food intake disorder. Intuitive eating does not work when your intuition says, I had a bad day, I want to eat an entire pizza by myself, and then I'm going to follow it up with an entire pint of ice cream. Like, that's probably not intuitive eating, right? But if you haven't built the skills to actually know what's in your food and to listen to your hunger and fullness cues, to eat regular meals so that when you do have a craving for a sweet, you just have the sweet and move on, that takes a long time. It takes a lot of practice to master, and you can't start there. So I don't use intuitive eating either. It bothers me. I use the word intentional. Intentional. Because when you're intentional about what you're eating, you don't rely on intuition, you don't rely on motivation, you don't rely on understanding what moderate means. Intentional, when it's defined, is done with purpose. It's planned. It is designed. Eating in moderation doesn't make sense when you don't know how to plan, when you don't know how to conceptualize moderate. But being intentional, you know how to be intentional. You're doing it on purpose. You're doing it with thought. That's all that freaking means. It depends on your situation, and you get to use your critical thinking skills to plan your nutritional intake even when you don't have a quote unquote plan or a meal plan. This is what eventually leads to what people do refer to as intuitive eating. When you start to know how to eat without a plan, that's intuitive eating, right? But you can't just eat without a plan if you have never had a plan, right? Or if all the plans that you've tried are pretty extreme in nature and you haven't really realized that because that's what we're bombarded with. So what I try to do is, okay, yes, let's plan your nutrition. Let's be intentional. But also, what are we going to do when you don't have a plan? What are you going to do when you decide to hit that snooze button and you don't wake up to cook your eggs and make the perfect little breakfast? What do you do now? What do you do when you stop by 7-Eleven? What do you do when you go through the drive-thru again? What do you do when you actually start to slip back into old habits? Why do we think that it has to either be, I'm on my plan, I'm like eating perfectly clean, or I'm completely off the rails? Listen to previous episodes. I talk about this a lot where you don't have to be miserable. You don't have to be in extremes. It can be pretty quote unquote moderate. And that's what we're talking about today, right? Is what the fuck does that mean? So what that means is you can choose to have the donut. The donut can serve a purpose, whether it's to get simple sugars quickly into your bloodstream, which can have a purpose, endurance athletes, or if you have hypoglycemia, you have low blood sugar, whatever it may be, or you just want the donut. Maybe you like to take your kids out before school on Fridays and get a donut, right? That's all good and fine with me. And that's what some would call moderation, but like, again, there's no purpose. There's no deeper guidance to it. But when you're intentional, why are you eating this thing? I'm enjoying the donut because I love donuts. I'm enjoying the donut because it's quality time with my kids. I'm enjoying the donut because it's convenience. I'm enjoying the donut. And how can I make the best of this? How can I maybe add some nutrients to make it a more complete meal? And those nutrients do not have to be like this perfectly organic, only seeds thing, whatever. It can be a chocolate milk because it has protein and fat in it, and it will, what we call like extend the meal, because a donut is literally going to be digested, absorbed, and out of your system. It's going to be used for energy fairly quickly because it doesn't have any bulk of protein, fiber, it does have fat, but it doesn't have that protein and that fiber to keep you full, right? You can have a donut and then an hour later you're hungry again. So if you could pair the donut with oatmeal, pair the donut with a chocolate milk, pair the donut with some fruit and some hard-boiled eggs, even better. And then don't freak out if sometimes you don't pair the donut. All right? But then you can also ask yourself, how can I balance this food with other nutritious foods throughout the day and throughout the entire week? One meal, one food does not make an entire diet healthy or unhealthy. And that is the whole quote unquote moderate concept, is a variety of diverse foods. That is the best nutrition advice. You don't want to just eat the same exact thing every single day because nutrients are, different in different foods. So if you keep it variable throughout the week and throughout the day, you're going to be getting most of your nutrients, especially if you live in this country. I'm not really worried with most of my clients coming in and being malnourished unless it's on purpose and they struggle with some disordered eating habits. I don't work with the community who may be coming in and working with nutritionists and providers who are struggling with getting enough food or getting enough quality food. And they might have deficiencies in vitamins, or they're not getting enough protein. They're not getting enough calories. They don't have any fiber in their diet, right? Those are concerning. But most of my clientele, it's mostly due to their choices or their lifestyles. Because again, people who hire a private coach or a private nutrition specialist, they're typically not dealing with food insecurity and resource insecurity. So typically, I try to look at like, okay, are we malnourished because you're just not freaking eating throughout the day? Why is that? Are you malnourished because all you're like quote unquote malnourished because all you're eating is fast food? You haven't had a freaking vegetable in 6 months? Like, okay, you probably are not malnourished. You're probably getting enough vitamins and whatnot because our food is fortified and French fries are still potatoes. But we're probably eating too much saturated fat. We're probably eating too much sodium or not enough fiber, things like that. So again, it's going to depend on the person, but you cannot blanket statement that I don't know. Anyway, let's look at I'm getting ahead of myself. When we are talking about being intentional with something like desserts, you can do that by including them into your plan, not trying to eat them in moderation, which in reality means only special occasions, which means rare. And then now you feel bad that you want a sweet treat. So then mentally and physically you attempt to restrict them and then you binge them anyway. So then you're like, I don't know how to eat them in moderation. I always eat the entire bag of candy. We're not going to do that. When you're intentional, you have the bag of candy in your house. You have a few pieces of candy possibly every day. And then you forget about the candy, or you just move on when the candy bag is over. You don't hyper focus on the candy. That's what we want to get to. And then we can start working on quote unquote intuitive eating, right? But when you're obsessing over the candy, you can't even think about being intuitive because your intuition is I'm thinking about the candy. Is that intuition? Is it telling me to eat all the candy? What? So when you're intentional, what that looks like, the first step is learning more about what nutrients are in your food. And this does not mean you download an app that tells you all the preservatives in a food are bad. I'm looking at you, Yucca app. It does not mean you have to get it perfect with perfect macros on every single piece of your food either. Okay, zoom out a little bit. You can start reading nutrition labels or looking up what certain foods contain, and you can start doing what I call an audit. I don't like to say, well, you're not going to get anywhere unless you track. You have to track. You have to track the numbers. You have to track forever. No, that's miserable. This is why nobody likes to do it. You can do an audit with certain foods or certain meals that you regularly consume and track them or weigh them or measure them just to see, oh, shoot, I didn't realize I was making myself a breakfast smoothie that had 1,200 calories in it. Who frickin' knew? So you don't have to track everything all the time forever. You can do an audit or measure just a couple of things to get an idea of what you're eating. And then step 2, we're going to look at what nutrients we do want to get more of. I'm not going to focus at first on restricting, meaning if you tell me you're eating fast food 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, I'm going to say, okay, what do we want to eat more of? And you're going to probably tell me I should probably eat a salad once in a while. You're going to tell me I should probably cook more or I should probably pack my lunch more. You're going to tell me because then I'm going to say, yes, you are right. I'm not going to tell me, okay, I'm not going to tell my client, yeah, that's way too much. Let's only do once a week. No, I might eventually ask you, okay, so now that we're eating more salads, we're eating more protein, we're eating more fibrous foods, you're eating breakfast more at home, yeah? And you say, yeah, I am. And I go, wow, that's amazing. So instead of 3 times a day, 7 days a week, you're eating fast food. How many times this week did you eat fast food? And you're like, only twice. I'm like, wow, it's amazing. How do you feel? How did you do that? And then we celebrate your wins. And then we figure out what worked and what didn't work. If you're like, well, I spent 12 hours on Sunday meal prepping. I'm going to ask, okay, are you going to do that this Sunday? And you're going to be like, yeah. And then I'm going to ask you, are you going to do that next Sunday? Are you going to do that the Sunday after? Are you going to do that 52 Sundays in a year? The answer is no. I mean, some people do, but you have to, and maybe the next couple of Sundays you practice and you get that 12 hours down to 6, and then you get that 6 hours down to 2 because you got better at meal prepping and you got better at cooking, or you figured out newer recipes that are quicker to make, right? So there is a practice learning curve here that I work with my clients on because it's not just one size fits all and here, eat this. Even when I'm a registered dietitian, circa a couple years from now, I will not be giving my clients a specific meal plan, eat this, because it doesn't frickin' work. Because I do not know what is all of the things involved in your eating habits or who you're feeding or how you're grocery shopping. And there are a lot of factors. So we look at what are you doing now? How are you eating now? Let's do a mini audit on things. And then what nutrients do we want to add more of? Typically, more protein, more fiber, more water. That's my 3 rules: more protein, more plants, more water. But sometimes it's iron, sometimes it's zinc, sometimes it's magnesium. Sometimes you're trying to get pregnant, so we want to make sure you're getting lots of folic acid and vitamin Bs and omega-3s and healthy fats to support your fertility and taking, a prenatal vitamin and all those other things too. So again, I'm not too worried about most of my clients being malnourished, but we can definitely optimize, quote unquote, shout out to Huberman. We can optimize some of that health by adding in lots of nutrients, right? But when we focus on don't have all those sugars, don't have all that fast food, don't have all your Coca-Colas, then you're like, man, all I'm thinking about is a freaking Coke and McDonald's fries. So I try to focus on, okay, what can we be eating throughout the day? And then you feel good, right? You're like, man, I had 3 nutritious full meals today. And I'm not hungry. I don't have any cravings. I feel pretty freaking energized. I've slept really well the last few nights. And then you go out and you have dinner with your girlfriend and you have an ice cream and you have a creme brulee and it's not the end of the world. And then you wake up in the morning and you go back to normal life. You're not beating yourself up over it. You're not like, okay, I can't eat anything today because I overate yesterday. You're not overcorrecting. You're just eating normal nutrients and normal food. That's how we get to moderation. But it takes practice. It takes specific skills and techniques that a lot of times those blogs or even Google doesn't tell you, right? It's just watch your portions. And you're like, cool, what's a portion? Do you mean servings? Do you mean what? What's my portion? What's the right thing to eat? This is why it's so confusing, right? So the third step, so again, just to read it, the first step is learning about what your food contains, doing an audit of some sort. The second is adding in more of those nutrients that we want. And the third is, again, now we're practicing that nothing is off limits, but we're enjoying lots of nutritious food. So you have to mentally allow yourself to know that the food, the treats are always there. They're always available. You have to get rid of that like scarcity mindset of the diet starts Monday, so I have to eat all of this bad food today. No, 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 no. You can have whatever food you want any day you want all the time. Mentally, you need to like give yourself that permission. Again, it takes practice. And then when you truly are allowing yourself to eat as much of that food as you want, you actually end up not craving that food as much. It loses its power. You end up like literally forgetting about it. Now, caveat here, there are certain people with what we call food noise. This is who is typically really responsive to a GLP-1 medication such as Ozempic. These people have basically their feedback loop in their body is telling them they're always hungry. Always hungry. You cannot stop thinking about food. Some people have this, and it's because they're not giving themselves enough food, right? They're like restricting a lot, so they're constantly thinking about food. Other people are eating enough, right? They're eating all the time. They're eating a lot of food, and they're still hungry. It's like they're eating a meal and they're thinking about the next meal, and it's because of this hormone feedback loop that their GLP-1 is really low, which is what, again, tells your brain to stop eating. So they don't have that feedback loop. The Ozempic is helping them to feel full and stop eating. So again, there's a little bit of caveat here, but typically when you know what your nutrients contain, know what nutrients your food contains. When you add in more of those nutrients, when you start to just build those meals throughout the day and stop depriving yourself of calories, stop depriving yourself of quote unquote treats, like Google says, and you really start practicing the techniques of, if mindful eating is right for you, doing that. If, again, maybe learning how to grocery shop more quote unquote intuitively and having certain skills for that is important. So there are these different methods to do things with the same outcome, but it's going to differ on your history in food, your mindset about food, who's around you, your habits, your stress levels, like all of the things, right? So when we get to step 3 and we're trying to figure out how to now balance the quote unquote nutrients with the quote unquote bad food, nothing's bad, right? We can have it all. Maybe even a Twinkie isn't that terrible. No one is saying to have a Twinkie for breakfast. No one is saying that your Twinkie is a full frickin' meal. But if you're a high school athlete and the only thing you want to eat is a Twinkie between your last period in soccer practice, and you have a Twinkie and it gets you through your soccer practice, and then you have a regular meal after your soccer practice, I'm not gonna argue. Versus, I might have another client who says, every day I pick up a 12-pack of Twinkies and I sit in front of my TV and I eat them all because I had a hard day. Now we have to challenge the emotional eating. We have a different situation here, right? It has nothing to do with the Twinkie. All right? So when we look at moderation, I want you to get that word out of your freaking brain. I want you to You're going to see it everywhere now. I am so sorry. Now you're going to hear it everywhere and you're going to cringe a little bit inside. I hope. You're going to hear yourself about to say it and then be like, shit. Ugh. And I want you to replace it with intentional. That's the word we're using. All right. And I hope this helps. I hope you can, I don't know, have a little peace of mind with the fact that you don't have to be so perfect and it doesn't have to be, perfectly clean and it has to only be nutritious. And I think you think 20% is a lot smaller than it actually is. So I hope my math helped bring that to light. But if you are interested in working with me with nutrition, definitely go to my website. You can book a 30 or 60-minute session. I do like ongoing coaching as well, but sometimes we just do like some, offhand sessions here and there and really work on your mindset, really work on some goals for nutritional intake. If you're somebody who has no idea what your calorie intake should be or like how to get 25 grams of fiber a day, which is the recommended dose for women, I can help you kind of sort through that stuff one-on-one. So definitely go to my website, www.kaylamariefitness.com, and click on the nutrition side, and you can see that there. Otherwise, I hope y'all have a fantastic day, and I will chat at you next week. Bye.
Thanks so much for being here, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please screenshot and tag me over on Instagram or leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening from. Your support means the world to me and only helps me get the No BS news out to more people. If you're interested in working with me in nutrition or personal training, check out my programs and courses on my website at kaylamariefitness.com and on Instagram at kaylamarie_fit. See you next week.